Hi, and welcome to Miss Emily's Kitchen. I'm Miss Emily. Welcome back to episode 7. Today we're making one of my favorite recipes to make for a crowd that uses up a lot of leftovers. Today it's shepherd's pie. So here's all the ingredients you're going to need to make it. So you'll need about 2 cups of leftover mashed potatoes, or you can make them fresh for the occasion, about a pound of ground beef that's been cooked, about a tablespoon of Worcestershire sauce, a tablespoon of tomato paste. You'll need about a teaspoon of garlic. You can crush that yourself. I just have a little thing of chopped garlic here. And then on to the rest. This is one of my secret ingredients for shepherd's pie. It's canned beef. I know it doesn't look the most appealing, but it tastes just like pot roast. So if you want to kind of emulate this flavor, you can make some pot roast. This is also typically made with ground lamb. I don't always have that readily available, so this is my secret to make it taste like it's been cooking all day. Another secret ingredient, a little bit of red wine. The kind you're using does not matter as long as it's a dry red wine. If you're under 21 and you can't buy it, don't worry, you don't need it to make the recipe taste good. It's just a little fun additive. So you'll need some thyme as well, some garlic powder, salt, pepper, and some beef broth. Now let's take a look at all the utensils you'll need to make it. So here's all the utensils you'll need to make it. You'll need a large pot, an 8 by 8 inch baking pan, need a spatula, and a wooden spoon. And that's all. So now we're ready to start cooking. So I have my large pot on the stove and my temperature set at about a medium heat. Nice part is you don't really have to cook a lot here because a lot of this is left over, so we're just kind of reheating. So we'll start by adding in our ground beef. Just kind of get that warming through. Make sure it's no like clumps in the middle, all nice and spread. And while that's warming up, you'll add your Worcestershire, your tomato paste, kind of start stirring that around. You can also go ahead and add in our wine. So I just have one of these tiny bottles of it, so I'm going to add in about half of that. And if you do this early enough on while cooking, a lot of the alcohol will cook out. If you're concerned about serving this to young ones, no worries, all the alcohol will cook out. It's also not necessary if you'd rather not use it. I totally understand. All right, so wine's in. I'm gonna add our garlic, just a little bit, and some salt and pepper, just to taste. Shake in a little pepper. And we'll do a pinch of our thyme. I never really measure dried spices because I always just kind of taste and see what I feel like. So a little sprinkle of thyme. A little shake of our garlic powder. Since we have the fresh garlic, you don't need too much. A splash of the beef broth. Really, you don't want this to be too liquidy. This is just kind of be enough to make a thick sauce. And now for my secret ingredient, our canned beef. Feel free to use pot roast or even that ground lamb we talked about, or you can just do this straight with the hamburger. I like this because it's another texture that's going to be added in. Get it out of there. See, it's nice, just shredded, tender meat that just needs warmed up. It's already cooked. Just going to start breaking that up and mixing everything in. So I buy my canned beef actually from a tiny little Mennonite grocery store. Some people make it themselves. If you're cooking beef at home and you make like pot roast, you just have to pressure cook it and seal it in a can. Otherwise, you can just kind of use leftover. It's really just like a nice shredded beef. So any kind of like a rump roast or something like that would suffice. So I'm just kind of breaking this all down and shredding that meat, mixing it with our ground beef. I like all the different textures in there because it kind of keeps this from becoming kind of mushy. You get some extra really tender beef pieces and it tastes like it's been on the stovetop all day long. So now that that's kind of cooking away, we'll add an ingredient that I forgot to mention earlier, is just some frozen peas and carrots. Super easy to add to this recipe because they just cook in the pot while you're going. So I'll add in the bag. Nice to sneak a little vegetables in there too. In that bag, I think, let's see, that was about a 12-ounce bag of peas and carrots. Really, if you want more vegetables, you can add them. I know some people will also add like corn kernels or even like chunks of potatoes, but because we're topping it with mashed potatoes, I don't really need to. I like this recipe because it all comes together in one pot and then you just put it in your baking pan. So really, right now, we're just kind of waiting for everything to warm through and for those peas and carrots to warm up. And let this cook for about 5 minutes or so, just so everything warms up, and we'll be right back. Now that our meat mixture is all the way warmed through, we're going to start with assembly of our shepherd's pie. So you'll take your 8x8 inch baking dish, and in the bottom we're going to put our mixture that we were working on the stove. Now if all this doesn't fit, that's okay. You can always put this in a bigger pan too if you want to make this for a big crowd of people. I like having a thick layer of mashed potatoes on top, so I'm only going to do about half beef to half potatoes. So kind of pack it down. You can see all those nice shreds of beef in there. And we'll take our leftover mashed potatoes. This is a great use because I know not everybody always eats leftover mashed potatoes when they're in the fridge. And you're just going to kind of cover the top of this with them and make it nice and pretty. If you want to make sure that it's going to be a little, I don't want to say easier to cut into later, you can always mix in 1 egg yolk with your potatoes, so that way when it bakes, it kind of forms like a nice potato crust. You can even add in some cheese. Now some people will do this with some Parmesan cheese to kind of get a nice browned effect on the top. Best part is just covering all this up, because I know that beef doesn't always look super appetizing to everyone, but this is almost like a nice version of a pot pie with no crust, so much, much easier. All right, so we just kind of get this covered, as much of the mashed potatoes as you need to make a firm layer on the top. And then if you wanted to brush this down with a beaten egg and some water, you can do that as well. It'll kind of brown it for you. But I kind of like mine just like this. Perfect. So now we're all covered. So this is ready to go into a 425-degree oven. It'll bake for about 15 minutes, and then we'll pull it out. So our shepherd's pie has been cooking in the oven for about 15 minutes. This is what it looks like when it's all done. So if you want that darker crust, you can always do the egg wash on top. Otherwise, this is just a nice mashed potato top. So we'll scoop out a little bit onto a plate. This isn't gonna scoop the easiest and it's not the prettiest dish, but it's that kind of homey comfort food that's really yummy, especially on a cold winter's day. Scoop a piece out, a little messy, but that's okay. Thank you so much for watching this episode of Miss Emily's Kitchen where we made shepherd's pie. Great part about this recipe, it's under $10 to make and it feeds a pretty large crowd and you get to use up a lot of leftovers. If you're following us on Facebook, make sure to like and subscribe to our page. And if you're following us on YouTube, make sure to hit that thumbs up button and also subscribe. We'll see you again next time.